We must master ourselves, unless we'd prefer to be mastered by someone or something else. Powerful stuff, right? That's from Ryan Holiday's book, Discipline, and I think it really sets the tone for our deep dive today.
Absolutely. It really gets to the heart of the matter, doesn't it? This whole idea of self-control. I mean, it runs through everything in life. Physical, mental, spiritual, you name it. It's crucial for achieving anything worthwhile, really.
So in this deep dive, we're going to explore all the fascinating stories and examples Ryan uses to bring this idea of discipline to life. I mean, we're talking figures from history, sports, politics, literature, all showcasing the power of discipline.
Yeah, and he does a brilliant job of organizing it all, too. He breaks it down into three parts. The exterior, that's the body. Then the inner domain, which is all about temperament. And finally, the magisterial, which gets into the soul. It's a structure that lets us really dig deep into how discipline shows up in every part of who we are.
So let's start with part one, the exterior. Right out of the gate, Ryan throws us into the classic story of Hercules at the crossroads. Faced with choosing between a life of ease and a life of hard work. What's interesting is how Hercules' dilemma speaks to that universal struggle we all face, that pull between immediate gratification and long-term fulfillment.
Exactly. It's not just some ancient myth, right? It's a reflection of the choices we make every single day. Each decision, each little habit we form, it's like we're inching closer to one path or the other.
Then Ryan brings in this idea of virtue being like a craft, something you hone through consistent action. He even quotes Aristotle. We become builders by building, and we become harpists by playing the harp. I love that.
It's so true, though, isn't it? I mean, virtue isn't something you're just born with. It's a skill, something you develop through practice, discipline practice.
And to illustrate this, Ryan brings in the story of baseball legend Lou Gehrig. I mean, the guy played a record-breaking 2,130 consecutive games. Talk about dedication. He earned that nickname, the Iron Horse, for a reason. But what I find fascinating is that Gehrig's discipline, it seems like it came from a pure love of the game.
Absolutely. Ryan talks about him playing stickball with kids even after pro games, and it just shows this genuine joy that was at the heart of it all. It's like his love for the game fueled his discipline. Makes you think, doesn't it? What are those things in our own lives that bring us that kind of joy, that we could tap into to fuel our own discipline?
It's a good question. Then, to contrast that, Ryan talks about the time Gehrig tried playing drunk. It worked for a bit, but it kind of highlights that there are no real shortcuts, right? Those temporary fixes, they can't replace the genuine rewards of discipline.
Yeah, the kind that's rooted in passion, in something real. And it's something we see with Gehrig again later, when he's facing that devastating ALS diagnosis. He famously said, "Today I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth." I mean, what an incredible perspective, right? Making the most of your time no matter the circumstances.
Truly inspiring. And it ties in perfectly with another idea Ryan explores, attacking the dawn. He uses the example of Toni Morrison, the author, who used to get up before dawn every day to write. It really underscores the power of those early hours and how we choose to spend our time.
It's a stark contrast to someone like King George IV, who is known for his excesses, overeating, overdrinking. Ryan contrasts him with Theodore Roosevelt, who actually overcame childhood illness through sheer willpower, through physical activity. He became a symbol of strength.
It's a powerful comparison, right? It shows how fleeting those pleasures of excess can be compared to the lasting rewards of a disciplined life.
I mean, King George IV is practically immobilized by his indulgences, while Roosevelt thrived on discipline. And it reminds us that it's never too late to start, either. Like Eisenhower, he quit smoking cold turkey at 58.
Wow. Think about that.
Yeah.
A lifelong smoker quitting one of the most addictive habits.
Yeah.
It really drives home the message that we have the power to conquer our demons, no matter how deeply entrenched they seem.
Exactly. Then Ryan introduces us to Cato the Elder, a Roman statesman known for his simple life. He rejected all those unnecessary possessions. What's interesting is that Cato believed true freedom came from wanting less.
Yeah, he basically detached himself from all those material desires so he could focus on serving his country and living a virtuous life.
Makes you think, right? How could we apply that principle of wanting less in our own lives? What benefits might come from simplifying our desires, our possessions? I think it would free up so much mental space, wouldn't it, to focus on what truly matters. And then there's Robert Moses, the urban planner. He was insanely productive, and he swore by a clean desk. It's such a small thing, but it highlights the link between outer order and inner calm.
Yeah, when your environment's cluttered, it can be so distracting.
Yeah.
But a clean, organized space that can foster focus and clarity. Makes me want to go clean my desk right now.
Me too. And then we have Thomas Edison, the inventor. It's amazing how his brilliance didn't come from some burst of inspiration. It came from showing up and doing the work consistently, day after day.
It reminds us that genius, a lot of times, it's about disciplined execution. It's about effort, not luck.
Right, it's about showing up and putting in the work, even when you don't feel like it. And then Ryan dives into this concept of hustle, using two Civil War generals as examples. General McClellan, he was sluggish, hesitant. Those delays cost the Union precious time and resources.
And then you have General Thomas, who was nicknamed Old Slow Trot. Sounds like the opposite of hustle, right? But he was actually incredibly meticulous, carefully preparing his troops before taking action.
So it's not about frantic activity, it's about deliberate action, being prepared. It's about that concept of festina lente, which basically means make haste slowly.
I love that. Ryan uses the example of Octavian, who later became Emperor Augustus, to explain this. Even though he was ambitious, he was also known for being patient and measured.
It's all about finding that balance, isn't it? That sweet spot between urgency and careful execution. It's a vital skill for anyone who wants to achieve long-term success.
Absolutely. And to wrap up this section on the exterior, Ryan shares the story of Miyamoto Musashi, the legendary samurai. The guy was famous for his discipline training and his ability to defeat all these overconfident opponents.
And it all came down to constant practice, constant improvement. He always believed that someone, somewhere, was working harder, getting better. It's a reminder that complacency is the enemy of progress.
So we've seen how Ryan emphasizes discipline in our actions, our habits, even how we approach our physical well-being.
Right. It's all about mastering the exterior. But now it gets even more interesting. In part 2, the inner domain, Ryan shifts gears. He dives into the mind, the temperament, all that internal stuff.
Yeah, this is where it gets really challenging, right? Mastering our thoughts, our emotions, our reactions, it's a whole different ballgame. And to kick it off, Ryan introduces us to Queen Elizabeth II as a prime example of someone who's mastered this inner game. Decades in the public eye, constant scrutiny, and yet she always seems so composed, so in control.
And think about it. Her role is largely symbolic, right? She doesn't actually wield a ton of political power. But her influence, her consistent temperament, her dedication to duty, that's where her real power lies. It's a powerful reminder that discipline isn't just about outward authority.
Ryan talks about her commitment to lifelong learning. Even though she doesn't directly act on most of the information she receives, she still reads these extensive daily reports, staying informed on all sorts of issues. It really makes you think, what's the value of continuous learning, even when there's no immediate tangible reward?
I think that's a key point, right? It's about growth. Even when there's no external pressure or immediate payoff, the Queen embodies that. And then there's her emotional control. I mean, she's known for her calm demeanor, even during crises or personal tragedies. It's amazing.
It makes you wonder, though, doesn't it? Does true discipline require us to suppress our emotions? Or is it about finding a balance?
Well, Ryan points out that the Queen can also be warm and engaging in her personal interactions. So it's not about being cold or aloof. It's more about that balance, right, between control and genuine connection.
There's a quote from the Queen that I think really captures this. She said, "If things are going to stay the same, then things are going to have to change."
It's about being adaptable, isn't it? And how crucial that is for maintaining discipline in a world that's constantly shifting.
Absolutely. It's not about resisting change, it's about facing it head on, but with a steady hand and a clear mind. It goes back to that idea of festina lente, make haste slowly. Be deliberate, but stay flexible.
And speaking of composure, Ryan takes us from the Queen to George Washington, another figure known for his self-control. He apparently had this mantra he'd repeat, in the calm light of mild philosophy, especially when things got tough.
It shows his deliberate approach to decision-making. Instead of reacting impulsively, he'd take a step back, assess the situation rationally, act from a place of principle, creating space between stimulus and response.
Then we move on to Booker T. Washington. Talk about focus. This guy was dedicated to educating Black men and women, and he never wavered from that purpose. It allowed him to prioritize, to say no to all those distractions pulling him in different directions. It's a powerful example of focus, right? He knew that every yes to something insignificant meant a no to something truly important. And to further emphasize the power of focus, Ryan brings in Beethoven. Even with all the distractions going on around him, he could completely immerse himself in his music, in his ideas.
In our world, with all its distractions, That ability to focus deeply, it's such a valuable skill. It's like that principle of attacking the dawn, right?
Mm,
Eliminate the distractions, focus intently, and then you can tap into that deep work. That's where the magic happens.
absolutely. And then Ryan shifts gears a bit, introduces Joyce Carol Oates, the writer. She's known for being incredibly patient with her writing process, waiting for the right moment to release her work, letting her ideas fully mature.
It's a perfect example of that saying, patience is bitter, but its fruit is sweet. Trusting the process, resisting the urge to rush things, letting them unfold in their own time. It's like festina lente all over again.
Sometimes, slowing down is the fastest way to get where you need to be. But on the flip side, Ryan cautions against perfectionism. He talks about Martha Graham, the dancer and choreographer, and her struggles with her ballet ceremonies. Her drive for perfection almost made her abandon the entire project.
It's a good reminder, isn't it? That sometimes we need to just finish things, move on. Perfectionism can be paralyzing. It's all about finding that balance between striving for excellence and
Hmm.
accepting that nothing will ever be perfect.
Right. And then Ryan hits us with this powerful message about the urgency of action. Procrastination, he says, is like this weird form of entitlement, like assuming we'll have more time, more discipline later.
It's a wake-up call, right? This is it.
Ah.
The present moment is the best time to act. Because delaying gratification, it often leads to regret down the road.
It takes us back to Hercules at the crossroads, doesn't it? Choosing immediate gratification over long-term fulfillment. It rarely ends well. Then, to illustrate the importance of resilience, Ryan shares the story of boxer Floyd Patterson. After a crushing defeat, he received this letter of encouragement from his former rival, Archie Moore, and it helped him get back on his feet, reclaim his title.
Such a powerful story. It shows that we can learn from our mistakes, right? And that accepting help, building resilience, it's all part of the journey.
Wow.
Even rivals can offer support.
And then we shift from the boxing ring to, well, JFK struggles with chronic pain. He was reliant on medication, trying to find that quick fix. But it's a cautionary tale, isn't it? Because sometimes those quick fixes do more harm than good.
It reminds us to look for those sustainable solutions, to address the root cause. And then we get into the philosophy of Epicurus, which is often misunderstood as hedonism, right? But Ryan clarifies that true Epicureanism is about mindful pleasure, finding those joys that are sustainable, that don't lead to negative consequences.
It connects back to Cato's simple life, the freedom that comes from wanting less. It's about quality over quantity, finding joy in simple things. And then to wrap up this section on the inner domain, Ryan shares a story about Sam Cassell, the basketball player. After a big win, he did the celebratory dance and ended up injuring his hip. It cost his team a shot at the championship.
Oh, wow. So even in moments of victory, we need to control our emotions. It's a reminder that letting passion completely override reason can lead to costly mistakes.
It's about that balance, again, expressing ourselves authentically, but with the discipline to stay focused on our goals. So we've covered a lot of ground here, from the Queen's quiet discipline to JFK's struggles to the philosophy of mindful pleasure.
It's a lot to unpack,
Whoa.
but I think the core message is clear. Self-mastery, it's not just about physical control, it's about cultivating that inner strength, that wisdom, that emotional intelligence.
It's about mastering our inner world so we can effectively lead ourselves and others.
So far, we've seen how Ryan emphasizes discipline in both our physical actions and our mental and emotional landscapes. Pretty powerful stuff.
It is. But he doesn't stop there. In part 3, the Magisterial, things get even bigger. We move beyond personal discipline into the realm of leadership. Higher stakes, intense pressure, and the impact of our choices, well, it just magnifies.
That's like leveling up, right? And to illustrate this, Ryan starts us off with the story of Antoninus Pius, the Roman emperor. His rise to power was totally unexpected, but he ended up being this incredible example of temperance, of virtue. At first, he didn't even want the job, but once he accepted it, he was all in, dedicated to serving Rome and preparing his adopted son, Marcus Aurelius, to succeed him.
His leadership was all about selflessness, putting the needs of the empire above his own time and time again. He brought stability, avoided unnecessary conflicts, and earned that title Pius for a reason. It really shows how discipline, when it shapes leadership, it can benefit everyone.
And it's interesting how Antoninus's disciplined approach rubbed off on Marcus Aurelius. He became one of history's most respected philosopher-emperors. Talk about a legacy, right?
It reminds us that our actions have a ripple effect. They impact those around us. Leading by example, it can be incredibly powerful. And then we dive into Marcus Aurelius' reign. I mean, the guy faced constant crises, wars, plagues, natural disasters, you name it.
And yet, through it all, he remained steadfast, leading with justice, with composure, never wavering from his principles.
It's like the ultimate test of discipline, right? Facing unimaginable adversity and still holding strong. And it brings us to a key theme Ryan keeps coming back to, leading by example. True leaders, he argues, they hold themselves to higher standards, not because they have to, but because it's the right thing to do.
It's about embodying those principles we expect of others. And to drive this point home, Ryan introduces us to Cato the Younger, the Roman statesman. This guy was known for his strict self-discipline, lived simply, even walked barefoot through Rome. He was totally unyielding in his principles.
But here's the thing. He was also tolerant of those who didn't live the same way. He understood that everyone has their own path, their own capacity for self-control. It's not about forcing our standards on others. It's about inspiring them, encouraging them to find their own way to excellence.
Right. It's like leading through action, not through judgment.
Exactly. Then Ryan brings in Hemingway's famous definition of courage. Grace under pressure.
Love that quote.
And he uses examples like Queen Elizabeth II, her composure during all those difficult times, and Pastor Martin Niemöller, his defiance against Nazi persecution, but always with dignity.
It's about staying true to yourself, even when everything around you feels like it's falling apart, finding that inner strength, that resilience.
And then we have General James Mattis, a respected military leader. He was all about sharing the burden with his troops, leading from the front, never asking his followers to do something he wouldn't do himself.
Powerful example of leadership, putting yourself on the line right alongside the people you're leading. And then Ryan contrasts George Washington's decision to step down after the Revolutionary War with Napoleon's hunger for power. Washington's choice was incredible. I mean, how often do you see leaders willingly give up power?
It says a lot about his character, doesn't it? It shows that true greatness, a lot of times it's about serving something larger than yourself. And then we get into this idea of turning the other cheek, and Ryan uses examples like Martin Luther King Jr.'s nonviolent resistance, Sandra Day O'Connor's unwavering care for her husband with Alzheimer's.
Responding to adversity with compassion, grace, holding on to your principles, even when it's the hardest thing to do.
Choosing empathy and understanding over retaliation, it's powerful stuff. And then there's this concept of strategic retreat. Ryan talks about the Dunkirk evacuation, that Spartan principle, return with your shield or on it, knowing when to disengage, when to regroup.
Sometimes stepping back is the most disciplined action you can take.
Exactly. And Ryan brings back Beethoven, this time focusing on his resilience when he started losing his hearing. He kept composing, even with that immense challenge. Imagine the discipline that took.
What a testament to the human spirit, right?
I don't know.
Overcoming adversity. Our limitations don't define us, our response to them does.
Exactly. And then Ryan contrasts this with Pompey the Great, his early successes and then his downfall. It highlights that the real battle, it's often within ourselves.
It's about mastering those inner demons. And to close out this exploration of discipline, Ryan goes back to Miyamoto Musashi, but this time focusing on how he kept evolving his swordsmanship, always adapting, always striving for improvement. And then he brings in Tom Brady, another legend, known for his relentless pursuit of excellence.
It's like it doesn't matter what you've already achieved. True strength is about adapting, growing, never settling. And finally, Ryan brings us back to Angela Merkel, her down-to-earth lifestyle, her decision to decline special treatment during the pandemic. It's a reminder to stay grounded, true to our values, even when we achieve success, when we're in positions of power.
What a journey, right? From ancient heroes and philosophers to modern-day leaders, Ryan takes us through this incredible exploration of discipline. It's not just a set of rules, it's a way of life, a commitment to constantly push yourself, to grow, to become the best version of yourself.
And as we wrap up our deep dive into Ryan's discipline, I think we're left with a powerful question. What area of your life could benefit most from increased discipline?
It's something to really think about, right?
Yeah.
And I hope that all the principles and examples we've discussed today, they give you some practical tools, some inspiration to apply this idea of discipline to your own life.
If you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like and subscribe to By the Pages for more. We've got tons of insightful deep dives into books that can truly transform your life. And for those of you wanting to dive deeper into Ryan's discipline, you can find a link in the episode description.
Thanks for joining us on this exploration of discipline. We'll see you next time for another deep dive into a book that has the power to change your perspective, to enhance your life.